Principal Matters Podcast, episode 472. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. And this week, we're going to be talking about Elemental Educator with my special guest, Tyler Comeau. Tyler Comeau is a truly inspiring guest. He's a visionary leader and an advocate for transformational education. And he's the creative force behind an amazing podcast called Elemental Educator. It's a podcast for all things education. And as a principal, a content creator, a leadership coach, he's redefining what it means to lead with purpose and with passion. And through his innovative approach that connects leadership with elements, earth, fire, water, and air, he empowers educators, leaders, and change makers to ground their values, embrace change, overcome adversity, and take bold action. And if you haven't listened to his podcast or seen it, Elemental Conversations, do I have that right, brother?
Yes, you do.
Okay. He dives deep into these themes, bringing together thought leaders and game changers for powerful discussions. And he's also a doctoral candidate with research focusing on the critical decision-making of Alberta's principles, shining a light on the support structures that empower school leaders to thrive, all the way from Alberta, Canada. Would you welcome to my show, Tyler Comeau. Tyler, why don't you fill in the gaps on that intro and tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you?
Hey, well, first, before I do that, well, thank you so much for the nice introduction. It's always fun to join a show and get to have a great conversation. I had you on my show earlier, and we had an incredible conversation. I loved it, and to get to continue it, it's just something I'm really looking forward to. So,
yeah, go ahead, fill in the gaps.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say your show is so much fun. I don't know if I've ever had that much fun being interviewed, and I've been on a lot of shows, Tyler.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say this at the front for listeners that if you haven't checked out Tyler's podcast, you need to, and it's so fast moving and it's so fun and it's so interesting, and so much of the editing that goes into like my show comes afterwards. You do it right on the spot, brother. I mean, you've got visuals, you got sounds, you got all kinds of things going on, and somehow you take all that with the calm, cool head of yours, and it just seems natural. So kudos, my friend.
Well, before I hurt my knee, you'd see the calm, cool top, but below the legs were just flapping and running as we tried to stay afloat, and we figured it out a little bit to a point. We'll unpack that a little bit later. I love to use the word unpack. People will learn that quickly. But yeah, so a little bit about, the background behind this is I was actually a tennis coach when I was growing up, and I loved playing tennis, and I loved playing semi-pro. I went and played in like the Western Canadian Games, the Canada Summer Games. I was looking at getting scholarships to schools in the States to go play, and it actually helped get me through school, because when I wanted to take a Bachelor of Science, I was in Lethbridge, and while I was there, I was coaching tennis with the local club, and I did it in the Northwest Territories. I grew up in Yellowknife, and one of the things that I got to start up was a tennis in the schools program, where it was the coolest job ever. I got to fly to like all of the communities in the Northwest Territories and teach tennis and bring it to them for the first time. Just me in a two-seater plane with a bag of like 50 rackets, some portable nets and balls, and I'd land, and they'd have no idea what I was doing there, and we would have the best time by the end of the week. And I brought it down to Lethbridge, got to travel to some schools, be the head pro of the tennis club there. Learned that I loved making an impact and helping people grow. And I was going to take a path of physiotherapy, of nursing, and then somebody brought it to my attention of what about education, and I tried it out. I fell in love with it. Ended up wanting to chase the idea of what impact can we have on the world and what influence can we have on the world for the better. And so all of my decisions that I've made around what I'm trying to do center around a general theme, a general value of impact, a general value of experience. And so from, a tennis coach to a volunteer firefighter to, wanting to become a school principal to writing my own book that's going to come out in the next couple of months here to a podcast that's hopefully taken off here quite well, and starting the doctorate that's going to be done in about a year's time. Everything's about what impact can we make on the world for the better.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So before I forget, I want you to tell me more about this book coming out, because by the time this releases, it's there's a good chance that your book will be available.
Oh, I hope. That would be really cool. So yeah, it's called The Elemental Leader, and it's about unlocking your potential. And it came from a conversation I was having with a friend when I was in my master's. And I used to be a science teacher, and I loved I loved the time when I got to talk about Aristotle, because he believed everything came from the four elements of earth, air, water, and fire. And we kept saying, well, what if things were that simple and came from just four things instead of everything that we know on the periodic table and cells and basics of life? What would it look like? How could it be simplified? Would it be easier to communicate? And from that, we hummed and hawed and said, maybe I should write a book about it and correlate it to what I'm trying to chase, which is impact on leadership. And so what would it look like if leadership could simply correlate down to, an earth, an air, a water, and a fire element? And so with that, I started really thinking for about 2 years around what this would look like, what it could be. And I did some jot notes here and there, and earth ended up becoming our core values and what we stand and believe for. And the air became the adversity, which is, the wind that pushes you back, that headwind that tries to slow you down. But, as it even came out on the podcast, the air is also what can give you lift, right? A good headwind is what gives a plane lift, and it can give you wind at your back. And we talked about the water element, which is about the idea of embracing change and actioning change, and what does that look like? And the fire element, which is all about the decision-making process. So the book actually takes 12 leaders throughout the world, whether they were CEOs or a prime minister or somebody very impactful in education, and it analyzes through case studies of them how they led with those elements. And so there's 3 for each element that we unpack, and then at the end of it I back it up with the research that says here's the actual evidence that supports what they did, what I'm trying to claim that they're doing, and then here's some actionable strategies for the reader. And it's kind of like a work along textbook tool guide as well at the bottom for people to navigate those elements themselves.
Oh my gosh, Tyler. Okay, so I'm so going off script, but this is so much fun. So, I'll geek out for just a minute because one of my daughters introduced me a couple of years ago to the Avatar, The Last Airbender, that whole series. And so I just met him. I'm like, Tyler, oh my gosh, if anybody can see the video.
That's the Avatar. Yeah.
He's got the tattoo right down his arm.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to Tyler Comeau, I'm going to start calling you the Avatar of education.
There we
Um,
go.
no, so that's so amazing. What a wonderful way to take, like, and I'm just going to geek out as a teacher right now. What a wonderful way to take ancient literature and the philosophies of Aristotle and apply them to the way that we learn, but also the way that we lead. So, earth being the core values, air being adversity and lift, water being embracing change, fire being decision making. What a fun way to just talk about, okay, let's talk about life and the complexities involved in learning and leadership, and let's make it practical and fun at the same time. I didn't realize until today's conversation that you had also been a tennis coach, that you'd had so much work prior to your career in education, really already as an educator. And so you've been doing this work for a really long time. I, I want to switch gears just a little bit. And I want to talk a little bit about the work you're doing now as a school leader. And I know you do so many things. You're not just a school leader, you're also teaching and inspiring through the podcast that you do. Tell us a little bit about your school community and some of the things you're really proud that are happening right now.
I have the the best school community. I think any leader is going to say that about where they are, where they
Mhm.
teach and where they work. But I really do. And the reason I say that is I have a team that loves to try new things and become innovative. I'm hiring. We had a teacher that's been with us for a very long time in a math and phys ed role decide that they want to go and become a hockey academy coach and a carpentry shop teacher. Amazing opportunity, and it leaves us in a position of finding one and somebody else. And I've had a teacher come to me and say, if I need to make a switch, I'll make the switch. This is exciting and fun, and we can handle the change, and we can post for whatever we're going to get that's going to be the best for our school because that's what we want. And the mindset of we need to bring in and have people in the spots that are best for our school and for the team to come together and have that vision with me is really powerful. And I can't take credit for this because this started to establish before I got there, and it started to establish with a very passionate teacher who wanted to help kids graduate because we had some kids that were not going to. And so he started, it's called a green certificate program in Alberta, and there's a ton of them. But the idea is they're agriculture farming based programs where, kids can interact with livestock or crop or a greenhouse, and then take tests and get up to 18 credits if they also do a couple extra courses. And so in the span that it typically takes a student to get 5 to 7 credits, they can get 18. And that program's helped kids graduate, and it's led to some incredible things. Like we got a live chicken coop in our school. And so from September to the start of June, we have a green certificate laying hen poultry program where kids will take on 25 laying hens, and we'll see them through the process of developing into a laying hen, to then laying, to then collecting and selling eggs to our community, to then, the whole process in between and after, to selling them at the end to families, and to cleaning and the chores that go aside with it. And so it's the life skills there. To then we said, we need to level it up and do something a lot more than what we're just doing to impact the rural community we're in. And so we applied for an ATCO grant for $25,000, and we actually got it. And the grant has gone to putting solar panels beside the chicken coop, where we now also have a bus that was donated, shelled out, and converted into a greenhouse. And so the solar panels are now powering the heat of our bus, which is running a greenhouse, which is providing the feed to the chicken coop. The chicken coop is providing the compost to the bus, and we now run a full cycle farm, which is hopefully a zero emissions. We have to crunch the numbers on what the solar panels are pushing out, but to then be able to put kids into another green certificate program. So now, simply through working in a greenhouse and working with our chickens, kids can get 35 credits in high school where 100's required, and they can hit the ground running in something very exciting. And the best part about it, and I feel like I'm rambling, but I'm so proud of what we do, is I get to go to students that aren't in the program or that are in the program and say, so what's missing? Right? Like, we have this, we have that, what's missing? And I have a kid say, like, that's a ton of agriculture stuff. What about computer stuff? And so we wrote grants, and now we have an esport lab where kids get to do coding and gaming and have a lot of fun. And kids went, now this is really great, but what about the art side? And we have a local person that wants to come into our community and run a guitar club every Thursday. Like, how cool is it that we just listen and respond and give the opportunities that everything's meant to be? And, some of them we do at lunch, some of them we do after school. And kids come, which means they want to be there, which means they enjoy what you're doing. And when they do that, the feeling of appreciation that we see, it's just next level.
Oh my gosh, Tyler. So what grade levels are you serving? And by the way, my brain is exploding with like excitement. I want to come so badly and walk and see your laying hens and those solar panels and that bus that's been converted into a greenhouse and your guitar club. What age students are you guys serving?
Dewberry is, it's a K to 12 school. The
Mhm.
kindergarten's private. So it's I oversee the 1 to 12 part.
Okay.
And we're quite rural. So our current enrollment is 80 kids, where
Oh,
we have approximately, I want to say we have 16 kids in our 1, 2, 3, 19 kids in our 4, 5, 6, right? We have 21 kids in our 7, 8, 9, and we've got about another that would leave, I believe, 18 to 19 in our high school.
wow. Man, what a community. I know you can wrap your arms around every single person that you're serving. And I'm not there, but I already know that Mr. Comeau is getting lots of attention, and especially from those little ones, man. I bet your legs are getting hugged every day.
You
Um,
know what? You know what? That's a fun part of the job, and the challenging part, right, is you would think that the multi-grade classroom is a big challenge, but it becomes such a pro that you get to see the leadership in the room, from older kids to younger kids, and the help and the support.
so Man, so much I want to talk to you about. I also want to talk to you about the research you've done. You're a doctoral candidate. You've been researching with a focus on decision making among principals. And so, can you talk to us a little bit about some of the things you've been learning? Because, I mean, not only are you doing the work, but you're researching the work. So, tell us some lessons you've been learning through that research.
Yeah, and that's kind of where the podcast came from. Is from the research that I'm doing to the stuff I'm actioning as a principal to the book I wrote, I said, I want to also connect with people. So I started the podcast to try to bring everything together. As we try to triangulate data as educators, let's triangulate it as leaders and people that want to put ourselves out there so people know it's coming from a place of genuineness and a place that's authentic. And so, you know, I went into the doctorate to seek to understand, because to have impact, you also have to understand what's happening around you. And I did my master's, and my capstone on my master's was the impact of response to intervention on graduation rates. And I learned a lot from going through a master's, and I learned a lot from that topic. To what it really came down to was to really make this work, to really make response to intervention work well. Principals need to make a decision to action it, and or a division needs to make a decision to action it. And so I thought, you know, I'm in my second year as a principal now. I did 1 year as an assistant principal. Decisions are really hard. And in your first year, when you feel like you have to make a tough decision, you don't want to call your central office because you don't want to seem like you can't do your job. And you don't want to call a colleague down the road because you don't want to seem like you can't do your job. And what I realized really quickly is those people called me all the time to seek help. Those people called me all the time to get help on decisions. And so you start to call them to get help on decisions, and you start to realize that it's actually just this big system of collaboration in teams. Now, I know that not all systems are like that, and I would say that that's unfortunate, because you're missing out on a part of being a highly effective team. But the doctorate came from wanting to take a look at the province that I'm in and how the leaders in the public education system make their decisions. Because I want to know, are they making them alone? Are they making them with their teams? What do they base their foundations for the decisions they make on? How often do they lean on our Education Act? How often do they lean on the admin procedures and the board policies? How often are they referring to the Guide to Education when they have to make a decision? How much of it comes down to moral and ethical stances and decisions? And by understanding how leaders in our public education system make decisions, because it's something that's under-researched, we can then start to offer support and guidance on how we make decisions to simplify the process for the principal that's been there for 20 years that doesn't know how to do it a different way because it's not been done for them, or the principal coming in to their first year that's a deer in the headlights, not knowing where to go. I want to be able to walk out of it with resources for those people to say, this might not be your answer, but I did a dive into where you're exactly working, and here's what I found on what could help you.
Yeah. What I love about that, Tyler, is it's so comprehensive, but it's, of course, you focused it on the region of the principles where you serve. But man, what an amazing thought experiment to take a step back from. I'll just tell a quick story. I remember one time I had a principal intern in my building who was working on her certification. And so part of her requirement was to shadow a leader. So she asked me if she could come down during her planning periods and just sit in my office and watch me work with kids. And so I would get permission from students if they came in. Is it okay if she's with us in this conversation? So, all those protocols I tried to follow to not breach confidentiality, but to invite her into the moment. And I just remember it was one of those settings where you're just kind of rapidly, like, you get a phone call and you decide on this, and then someone walks in and you help them with this, and I don't know, 45 minutes in to the session, she just stopped and said, "How do you know how to answer all these questions? How do you know the response you're supposed to be given?" And it was one of those moments where you had to stop and back up and go, "Yeah, how do I know this?" And those, you just said four things. How much of the decisions that we're making are we doing by ourselves? How much of it is based on leaning into others who teach us what we need to know? How much of it is understanding our policies and really being familiar with the protocols and the handbooks and the things that guide us? And then how much of it is based on our own moral or ethical, radar, so that we know what we're doing too? And the answer is all of them. But I want to ask you, as you looked across the spectrum of those, of the development of how to make hard decisions, uh, what's something that either stood out to you or surprised you as you were digging into all that data?
how, not everybody makes hard decisions based off of their values and their non-negotiables. And I bring it back to why I started Elemental Educator and wrote Elemental Leader, and if, tried to simplify it is, and Simon Sinek said it best: people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Mm.
And one of my colleagues, I think they're quoting John Maxwell when they say, when you lose your why, you lose your way. And it's the idea of, if you don't know that why, if you don't know that value, then you're making a decision that's on a whim, and you're kind of shooting blind, and you don't know if that decision is going to land, and it's going to be something that 5 years from now you can stand by, because it might not be rooted in a core value that you stand for.
Mm.
And if it's not, then that decision is going to change over time. And if it is, it still might change over time, but it's a change that you can stand behind, that you're probably going to be more successful at implementing and getting buy-in for. So what surprised me would have been the amount of decisions that aren't made from a value, that aren't made from a why standpoint. They're not done with intention. I hope that answers the first part of the question, is what surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
And remind me of the second part here.
No, anything else that stood out to you in that research that that was an important takeaway for you?
I think so far it's just how understudied it is.
Okay.
Right? There's research on everything and anything around it, on the ethics side of things, on the hierarchical side of things, on the history of things, but there's not a lot of actual research on the role of a school principal and how they make decisions.
So one of the reasons that I'm just so curious is a couple of reasons. One, I had a couple of researchers, a friend of mine who has gone into research. I won't name any names, but from the Chicago area, some university researchers that reached out to me, and they were trying to grapple with this question too, of how do principals make their decisions on curriculum, or how do they make their decisions? And so they were just kind of asking me, what's the best data to put in front of a principal so they're making the right decision? And you know where my brain's going, because it took me a long time to respond to that question, because I was like, wow, that's not an easy question to respond to, because principals don't just respond to data to make decisions. Principals respond to culture, they respond to history, they respond to political pressures, they respond to the people right in front of them, they respond to student academic progress. There's so many variables that go into decision making. And that's one of the reasons, like in my new book, Tyler, I took a chapter on just the complexities involved in this work, and how do we make it simpler. But it's never going to be easy, but how do we make it simpler? And I think what I hear you saying is that within those complexities, that the most important foundation is holding on to the purpose and the why and the reason that you're making these decisions in the first place. And everything, if you can push everything through that filter, then you're going to actually be re-examining your practices and your policies and your outcomes and all those things, because if they're not matching that purpose and that why, then they're probably going to be taking you down the wrong direction, and you're going to be ending up in the wrong goal. Anything else you want to add to that before I ask? Because I'm going to change gears here in a second.
I just want to say, yeah, you're spot on. And a simple practice that any leader could take on is, if you have a staff meeting, if you have an email, if you have a chance to action professional development, in the information that you're sending people that says what it is you're doing, beside it put why, right? And in that why column, that needs to relate to your company or your workplaces or your personal mission. It needs to relate to the values. It needs to relate to the priorities, right? So, a big push in our division right now is we have a priority on numeracy and literacy. So some of the decisions we make to focus on some of these conversations or bring people in to work with us, right beside what's happening, there's a why that says we have a division priority that focuses on numeracy and literacy. We're prioritizing that by giving time for it,
Mm-hmm.
right? our school mantra is working together for success. So when we have a collaborative time and we sit down and we have an open floor conversation about what's working, what's not working, our why that we're having this is because we're working together for success.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh. So, you've probably figured out with me, Tyler, my brain goes so many directions. It's hard for me to hold on to just one thought at a time, but I'll add one more thing and then I'm going to move on. But because I'm just applying this personally, I was working with a group recently. I work with a lot of groups, and as you know, in different states, and especially with leaders. And so much of the work that I do is really leader focused, with the idea that if a leader can be grounded in all these things that we're talking about, they're going to communicate more directly and more intentionally with their teachers, and their teachers, they're therefore going to have more intention with those students, and then therefore their outcomes will be stronger too. And there's one group across the state of Ohio I've worked with, and the director there has told me that since I've been working with these leaders, some of them for 3 or 4 years now, most of their state test scores have gone up. In fact, she said a lot of them, when they first began working with me, were scoring below state averages, some of them even in the D grades, and now most of them are scoring Bs or higher. And so I was asking, that's so interesting to see the growth that's happening in these schools, but I have no idea how to draw any direct correlation between like what I'm doing and the outcomes of these students. And then recently I had a leader reach out to me, and he was wanting his district to help me bring in some leadership development with his team. And the response of his leadership was, well, we can't see how this work will directly influence student outcomes. And so, and I was thinking about this analogy, you're thinking about all the elements. I was thinking like, how how do you how do you help people understand that the fruit that you're seeing on a tree begins in the roots? You don't just judge the fruit based on the fruit itself. It has to start somewhere. And so what I hear you saying in all of the research that you're doing is that if you want to see the kind of outcomes with students that are the kind of place that you would dream every child could have for their experience at school, then you have to come all the way back to the decisions that are being made by the leaders that are holding on to the purpose and the why, so that it's translated from person to person, all the way to those students, so that their outcomes are all being influenced by that same purpose and that commitment. So anyway, that's my little tirade is I'm thinking about what you're saying.
I want to jump in on that, and I want to break it down this way. So there are 3 levels of engagement that we can have. You can have you can have emotional engagement. And that first level of emotional engagement is the reptilian brain deciding if something is safe or not.
Mm.
And it's the idea to create a safe space so that instead of going through fight, flight, and freeze repeatedly, you begin to bypass and move past the idea of fight, flight, freeze, and you start to move into the next stages. And after emotional engagement becomes behavioral engagement. So it's how they're going to then respond to that. Because if we're in fight, flight, and freeze, we're not thinking about how we're responding, we're just responding. But now we can get to the behavioral engagement, which is responding. And once we can establish the norms of behavioral engagement, we can then finally move to cognitive engagement, which is actually thinking about in depth the critical analysis on what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So this ties back completely to the elements, because to create that emotional engagement, to create a place of safety, you have to root your environment in a value that matters, not to you, but to the room, to the people around you. And that's going to begin to create that safety piece. You're going to build the emotional engagement that way. You're going to face some adversity along that path. That's your air element coming in, and how you navigate that is going to be how you action your water element and how you make those decisions with your fire element. When you move to behavioral engagement, a lot of people equate this to setting your classroom expectations, your classroom norms. I equate it to holding people accountable to their actions on a consistent basis. So you continue to bring your earth element and your values into it. You're going to reinforce behavioral engagement by reinforcing your values. We don't do this because it's not right is a horrible response. It's what you value as to why you would do something or not do something, right? We value working together, and what we're doing right now is working against each other. So we need to stop what we're doing and start working together, right? And that explanation to a kid in junior high, senior high, it can actually shift them completely. And they're going to say, yes, you're right. My bad. And then 10 minutes later, they do it again, and you have to reinforce the consistent action behind it because junior high kids on a full moon, on a short week, on a Friday that before school, they're going to go nuts. Um, Now, that being said, the cognitive engagement can only happen if you've established the emotional and behavioral. And that cognitive engagement, that deep level of understanding, that ability to start actually collecting information, storing it, and analyzing it for yourself is only going to happen if you've been able to establish the first two, which from this explanation can only happen if you're rooting them in a why, if you're rooting them in a value, and if you're creating decisions and handling adversity in a way that makes people feel safe. So I love the question. How does making decisions impact student learning? Every way possible, right? Like we want to go down that big tangent road, right? If we don't have that understanding before we work with kids, we have to work with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I cannot wait till your book comes out, and I hope you give me a chance to review it and endorse it, Tyler, because I'm so excited to learn more and to really dig deeply into all of these the ways that you frame learning through earth, air, water, fire. Okay, I'm going to change gears. My speed round's nothing like yours because when I was on your show, man, you had like visuals and timers and all kinds of really cool things going on. But I just wanted to take a quick spot at this part of the show and just ask you some questions about your your content creation, your YouTube videos, your podcasts. I mean, you've taken a big leap because you're a full-time school leader. You're working on a book. You're working on your advanced degrees, and but man, I have to say, as someone that has been doing content creation for a long time now, that you do it really well, Tyler. And
Thank you.
I just admire your work. So I just wanted to ask you three quick questions about this big leap and what it's been like as for you as a leader and a content creator. Number one, what's gone well?
The connection, right? Like everybody that I get to talk to has an incredible story, yours included. And the ability to bring people together and you put out an episode and you don't realize the messages that come in after of people saying this helped me because, and you get this response, and I get to share it with the people when the episode comes out. The connection.
I love that. What surprised you?
How quickly I could grow.
Mm,
It's it's only been a year of the show so far. It's only been a year of that, and it started as just an audio show and it's turned into a video show and an audio show. I Whichever way people want to receive it. Well, coming back to the idea of impact, right? Some people are impacted by audio, so we do audio. Some people are impacted by video, so we do video. Some people are impacted by shorts, so we make shorts. Some people are impacted by walls of text, so we do walls of text. It's the impact and the ability to adapt and grow with it.
well, you've inspired me because I've done audio for a really long time, and we're just now starting to play around with video too. So, thank you for modeling that. Three, is there anything you do differently moving forward?
If I knew the answer, I'd probably do it. um, One thing though, you bring up a good point is my show has evolved even in just the year that it's existed. You can tell if you go listen to my first 5 to 10 episodes, the nerves in us and the script is basically coming off of the screen. And the first time you're putting something out to the world, you want it to be polished and perfect, and you're nervous that, oh, what if I even pronounce something wrong? That's gonna suck, right? So you can hear the polishedness in what we've done. And then it evolved to I want the conversation. And so it actually changed from just being called the Elemental Educator podcast, which is what it is on Apple still, but on YouTube it's transitioned to Elemental Conversations because I want it to be
Mm,
that natural feeling environment. And from that, when we talk impact, people like to listen to things that are entertaining, that they're going to pull meaning from. That could be quick, rapid fire. Again, I'm trying to triangulate the information we're getting. So it's also evolved from a conversation to then bringing the games in, right? That are fun to play, just like these little rapid fire ones. And so, you know, things that I would do different is continue to evolve to meet what people are hoping to see.
I love that. And I'll just say it as a follow up to that, as a fellow, podcaster, content creator, I've done this for a long time now. And because it's become a part of the work that I do. It's become a really natural part of my work cycles. There are times when I'm scheduling a show, getting ready to do a podcast, getting ready to record, that it feels like work. I'm like, oh, okay, I got to get my scripts ready. I got to get all this ready. But what happens when I turn on that record button, Tyler, is what happened today, which is like suddenly I'm just sucked into learning, and my whole mind is expanding like on, oh my gosh, there's a school that is giving kids the opportunity to earn credits in laying hens and solar panels, and there's some experience out there that I wasn't aware of that I want to now be as close to as I possibly can. And so thank you for expanding my world, and as a guest, but also for expanding the worlds of other people by having the courage to do this kind of work too. As we wrap up, I just want to give you an opportunity to also speak to any leaders out there that may be stepping into this work as new leaders, because I have a lot of aspiring leaders or newer leaders that listen to this podcast too. What is some advice you would give them as they're stepping into a new season in their own work?
Ask questions and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. I say that because as a new leader, you want to come in and succeed, and you want to come in and make that impact. And, some people want to come in and feel liked. Some people want to come into roles and feel popular. And some people want to come into roles to make chaos. And whatever role you're coming into, whatever scenario you're coming into, those need to not matter to you. What needs to matter to you is, are you comfortable with every decision you're making? Mm-hmm. And one thing that I learned really quick in my first year as a principal is a lot of people are going to tell you the way that something should be and something needs to be. And it is actually your decision on what it's going to be. Mm-hmm. And it's your choice to collaborate with a team on that and figure out what it's going to be. It's your choice if you want to make it alone. I don't recommend it, but it is your choice. So please, when you go into roles that are brand new, or you go into that leadership role, recognize that you were brought in not to be a replica of what went out. You were brought in to be you, and you interviewed for you, and your application is for you. So go and be you, mm-hmm. and make those decisions for you.
I love that advice. Will be the 470. This will be episode 472, Tyler. And even as we were starting today's conversation, I was just thinking about, how is it possible that I've interviewed 472 people, or done, hundreds of podcasts, and every leader is so uniquely different. And so I'm so glad you said that, because when you bring yourself to this work, you're not supposed to be the person you're replacing, and you're not supposed to be someone else's vision of what a great leader is. You just need to be you in this work. But I'm so glad you brought it full circle. There's things that need to happen or should happen, but you're the one that's going to actually make them, decide how they're going to happen in this work too. As we wrap up, how can listeners stay connected with you, and any parting words or thoughts?
Oh, please do. If you have comments, thoughts, questions, you can email me, tyler@elementaleducator.com. You'll also find me on Instagram @elemental_educator. LinkedIn is Tyler Comeau, and our YouTube is @elementaleducator. Either of those connections are all great. If I was to ask your listeners to do one, go subscribe to that YouTube channel.
Do it. All right, Principal Matters listeners, that's your call to action today. You can go find Elemental Educator with Tyler Comeau on your phone, on your computer, and then subscribe to his YouTube channel, and let's keep learning together. Tyler, thank you so much for your amazing work. And Principal Matters listeners, thank you for listening in today, and thanks for doing what matters. We'll talk to you again soon.